Many times I have been asked, why are so many beautiful buildings in Cuba crumbling? There are two types of buildings that have been decaying and crumbling for a long time in Cuba. The ones built around colonial times and the ones that were built around the turn into the 20th century. When the latter of these buildings were built, a new construction system for upper floors and roofs became very popular in Cuba and in other countries in the Caribbean because of its simplicity, cost, and short time for erection. The system consisted of light steel beams placed by hand between the walls at approximately 3 feet from each other. Small reinforced concrete slabs were placed by hand between the steel beams. The concrete for the slabs was made with Portland cement and sand from the beaches, reinforced with steel bars placed directly at the bottom of the slabs. Reinforced concrete was a new material. It was not known that beach sand should not be used in construction due to its high content of salt that oxidizes the steel, nor that the steel has to be separated from the bottom in order to be covered and protected by the concrete. The result was that gradually the steel would become oxidized, expanding in size and breaking the surrounding concrete in chunks that would fall out, with people living under them. The other type of building that were crumbling were erected during colonial times. In this era, Portland cement that hardens permanently when in contact with water had not been invented yet. These buildings were erected with thick walls made up of stones joined together with lime-based mortar. Roofs and floors were made of wood. Lime-based mortar does not harden permanently with water as Portland cement-based mortar does. With the passage of time, the rain and humidity would gradually take a toll on the walls. During heavy rains, some buildings would collapse suddenly and still do, often burying residents with them. The buildings that were made with milled stone had no problems with the passage of time. Castro took over Cuba on January of 1959. Shortly thereafter, he confiscated all the residential buildings in the country through a law that was called urban reform. This law made all former tenants of existing residential buildings or houses owners of the units or houses where they lived. This law should have included the maintenance and repairs of the units and of the buildings by the new owners, but it did not. The new owners could not afford to maintain their own units, least of all the buildings. The government did not invest any resources in maintaining those buildings thereafter, since they had become the property of the former tenants. On top of that, very few building materials were available for purchase. All those factors together contributed to the decay of the beautiful buildings that made Cuba famous for its architecture. The UNESCO has been providing funds for the reconstruction of a number of historically prominent buildings in key areas. The government has also been reconstructing many prominent buildings. Cuba, the pearl of the Antilles. As Christopher Columbus said upon landing on October of 1492, the most beautiful land that human eyes have ever seen.